The future is green. And yes, green does mean sustainable, but we're talking about the green, known as cannabis, hemp, ganja, weed, and a plethora of other names if you want to keep it small. But the world of cannabis is much bigger than smoke and mirrors. I'm Kendall, the farm plug.
I'm Antoine Mordican.
And I'm Dr. Snap.
And this is Growing the Green.
Welcome to everybody. This is Antoine Mordican, your Alabama State Director for Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and I got some incredible news for you today. We're going to do it in a little bit in reverse this time. We're going to go speak about our neighbors first. We're going to touch on the national level first because the state of Georgia, we got a representative out there that's now presenting a decriminalization, a legalization bill over in the state of Georgia. And they got some pretty specific demands that I think is very unique, and hopefully they are able to get it through. But most importantly, making sure that the people get out there and vote, because they got their whole own little situation with their congressional maps and everything as well. But however, with this new bill that they presenting, they are demanding expungements for petty marijuana offenses. Most importantly, making sure that those that have been highly impacted by the war on drugs, which most likely is the black Georgians, making sure that we able to create a path for them that they can be able to get into the medical cannabis space that they currently have in Georgia, which is almost it's pretty much monopolized because there's only two folks that hold the licenses. And I want to give a big shout out to the Georgia State Director for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. His name is Coach Harris. He just got appointed, but he's been extremely active in the cannabis space and most importantly in the hemp space. And he helped to get a lot of things through over there in the state of Georgia. So I want to go ahead and give him a shout out because it's a lot of work that they are currently doing over there in the state of Georgia. But most importantly, trying to get it legalized and decriminalized over there in Georgia so we can ultimately liberate the plant over there. But in local news, man, so Alabama, we got some things going. So now that the judge has allowed for the commission to be able to move forward with the emergency rules that they put into place, we pretty much got a 30-day window where I'll give it 60 days as a buffer to pretty much get everything done. So they got a wealth and a list of things that they got to get done here in the next couple of weeks. Which will be allowing for companies that had, so the emergency rule would allow for the companies that had ran into some deficiency issues based off the file limitations that I think was like a 10 megabyte file size limitation that they was able to submit. They could be able to get that corrected to be able to upload the uncompressed version of it. Also, you have to update the redacted versions of your application as well. They'll allow companies to be able to address any past or failed deficiencies. But the biggest thing that they're going to allow for companies to do is to be able to give a 20-minute for all companies except vertically integrated, a 45-minute presentation in front of the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission. And this is going to be in a public hearing setting. So the commission will be able to hear the companies, be able to ask questions, and to be able to allow for them to provide their answers in the public while they consider to be able to award them the license. And this is going to be critical for a lot of companies, especially for those that was denied, such as myself and a few other companies, to be able to have that opportunity to be able to speak in front of the commission and let them know what's our reason, our purpose, our reasons, our why, on why we should be awarded a license. And most importantly, making sure that we create a program that the Alabamians want to see, and ultimately creating that transparency that the commission should have been able to do at the beginning. However, we all know how that goes. We know how the last few months been going on, but they are now moving forward with creating that transparency and allowing for those companies that had those issues and those deficiencies to be able to address them in a public setting so we can be able to get this program on the road. They plan on the first day of the public hearings will be November 27th. There will be cultivation and state lab testing presented then day 2, which is November 28th. It will be dispensaries and secure transportation and process. I think November 29th will be processing. And then they're going to actually host a vertically integrated on a totally different week. So they're going to be re-awarding the licenses again December 1st. That's the big date. December 1st, they'll be re-awarding the licenses. And then through December 4th through December 8th, they'll be interviewing and allowing for the vertically integrated companies to be able to make their presentations. And then they'll be rolling out the licenses shortly after that. So by the end of this year, people, we should have all the companies should be issued and awarded licenses, and we should at least possibly see some medical cannabis and medical medicine in the market possibly by spring. That's a fingers crossed moment. But with that being said, that's all that we have for the news. And we're going to get into an amazing conversation today, because this is really where your dollar lies, and this is where all the work lies at.
And I think it's a perfect segue, right? Not only are we watching Alabama closely because of, what's going on with the congressional redistricting or the redrawing of the district maps, which is a big social equity issue, right? But also having this conversation of the licenses in Alabama, and part of the discrepancies and why this process has been having to get started over and over again was because of the lack of concentration and focus, and really just due diligence, and plainly put, on making sure that social equity was supported, and that the grading and the rubrics and things like that. So I'm gonna just open it up with a very basic question. When we think about social equity, and the topic today is social equity and economics, but I want to unpack the social equity part first, and then we'll be able to talk about its impact on economics later. But when you think about the cannabis industry and the word social equity, what comes to mind?
Bigfoot.
Incarceration.
Oh, Bigfoot and incarceration. So y'all can rock paper scissors. I don't know. I don't know who to go to first.
I'll kick it off because I know where Dr. Snapper is going with it. But I say Bigfoot because now that I'm actually in the space in the industry, and when a lot of folks speak of social equity, they use it more as a buzzword and not anything that really holds any substance of value. So when folks speak of social equity, they think of, I could just pretty much say just Black representation, just kind of getting a Black face out there, but most importantly, not necessarily doing the legwork that it takes to be able to get the expungement clinics, to be able to get folks' records expunged, to be able to get folks the opportunity to be able to work into the space in the industry. Because, if you have any kind of narcotic charge or a felon, anything like that, you can't enter the industry. So when you speak of social equity, it has to be a very unique individual, such as myself, that has none of these type of charges, that can be able to come up and actually create what I think social equity is really giving Black folks the equity and the complete ownership and control to be able to delegate on how they want things to roll out. So this past weekend, I got the opportunity to speak at the Marijuana Cannabis Business Association Equity Tour out in Atlanta, Georgia. And this question was also presented as well. And the question was like, what do we see? What's true equity or social equity? In my opinion, is having true Black ownership in these spaces, in these industries, where we have the opportunity and we have the voting power. We have the absolute power to be able to control how those dollars are allocated, how those funds are being distributed, how these programs are being ran, how we are bringing people in to be able to participate in this industry, and how we're able to overall impact our community to be able to uplift them up. Because only us really know the experience that our folks go through dealing with this plant. So when you create social equity, you have to have those that are in the community, that are of the community, and that have the impact and the influence of the community to be able to, kind of roll these things out. Because when you kind of get social equity, let's use, what's one of the bigger companies? I got respect for Trulieve, but let's use Trulieve. They do a lot of social equity talking, diversity, equity, inclusion, and things like that. However, when you look at the executive stuff, like, they have no really true Black ownership in it, and the things that they kind of do, like, yeah, they may be able to give to some other nonprofit organizations, and that can come from us as well as true owners. We can allocate how those dollars are used for these nonprofit organizations that we know that are grassroots organizations, that we know that are doing the work, and that we know that we can fund them to be able to do the things that they need to get done to be able to impact the community and uplift them up. However, these other larger corporations, they don't really have the value in that, because they more looking at the bottom line. If the bottom line ain't making sense, they're not going to look at social equity. They're not going to look at that diversity, equity, inclusion. However, myself as a business owner and having the control over everything, I could be able to take that hit. I can be able to take that financial impact to make sure that I'm still able to benefit and uplift and help my community, because that's what my ultimate goal is. My ultimate goal is not the dollar. My ultimate goal is to be able to help my people and lift them up. And in my opinion, that's true social equity.
Okay, now, thank you, Antoine. So, Snapper, you said mass incarceration, which is like, whoa. So I need you to unpack that a little bit for the people in the back.
All right. So y'all hear me?
Yeah.
We here?
Yeah.
So, so incarceration. So that's what I say. Incarceration for the simple fact that accessibility because of incarceration, right? So that is an issue when considering that some of these people that may have been incarcerated for some of these crimes that are affiliated in the marijuana industry could be prime workers, prime participants in that same field. You know what I'm saying? Like that should give them the upper hand versus excluding them out, right? So they have a certain skill set that may be great for the whole community of the cannabis field. So just having the prior convictions excluding you from participating is a major issue. A major issue. I mean that could be that should not be the case when considering how accessibility, you know what I'm saying, just wrapping it up with accessibility and when it comes to the incarceration, that's just, it should not be that way. Those should be the main people that are affiliated or the people who are given the first opportunities to be in that space.
And so even when you think about again, the whole conversation about growing the green on this show is looking at the intersections of those who are directly impacted the most by climate change and the war on drugs, right? And so in particular, when we look at the war on drugs, there are so many books, there are so many papers, there's so much factual and empirical evidence and data that shows us the impact of the war on drugs for particular communities, not only when it first began, right, but also since, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, looking at the past, right? This entire industry, and really like most other industries in the United States, is built off the exploitation of a specific group of people. And those groups of people are continuously demonized. They're continuously have propaganda used against them, intentional misinformation and miscommunication of this data that ultimately puts us in a situation that makes social equity a conversation in the first place. So it's just really interesting to me that, and me and my homie, my partner, we were just watching Batman this morning, the new one with Robert Pattinson, and it's just really interesting to see how someone like Bruce Wayne, right, can put on, like, Bruce Wayne is a billionaire in the daytime, but then he feels like he doesn't have the power to make the change in the daytime. So now he takes all his money and invests it in himself, in gadgets and things like that, to go outside to bring justice in the nighttime. But the reality is, like, there's so much that you can do as a billionaire Bruce Wayne that, like, you could be doing that. Like, you don't have to be Batman. You have other options. And I think I see that when I look at this conversation in social equity, and we have this conversation again. We definitely encourage people to check us out on CISC 1881 on YouTube, or where we have Canna KwanzaaCon, and we've had this conversation in the past. So I definitely shout out Anton Seals from Grow Greater Inglewood up in Chicago, because I'm reflecting, I remember him saying something that, like, if we actually achieve what we want to achieve in this industry, then social equity is not going to be what we're talking about in the next 20 years. And the only way that we can get to that is by doing what Antoine touched on, right? Is by making sure that we have actual people of these communities that are running this entire vertical, like this system. This is a whole system, just like any other system in the United States. And what we have right now with this industry is the opportunity to let these same people who have been, again, intentionally disenfranchised, right? And intentionally plotted against by the US government in very real, very practical ways. Like, we have FBI files that show these things. So until these same people have the space to practice economics in a way that is not bombarded on them by outside entities. So it really makes what Antoine is talking about, this opportunity on November 27th, for people to actually hear the voices of the people that are applying for these licenses. Like, I know in Chicago, something that they were doing was that you would have these super white organizations would go to the hoods of Chicago, and they would pick out Black people to like do the talking for them. So it was very textbook 101 representation. Like we're gonna tokenize this group of Black people to go into their community to make it look like we're black-faced and that we have the intentions of the Black community, when in reality we're just making sure that it looks like, you know, like representation. Like it, and sometimes representation is a bad thing in that way, because you get, you know, some people tap dancing that look Black. So you think that the interests are Black, but that's not always the case. So when I think about social equity, I think about all the things that you guys said, but I definitely think about the economic impacts, right? Because that's ultimately, in a capitalist society, that holds a lot of weight.
Yeah, now the economics of it, that's why it's important for us to be in a position of having true equity, which equity is that ownership. We have to be able to have the say so on how we use and how we choose to use those dollars. So for example, you know, we have minorities for medical marijuana that happens to be able to, you know, to do fundraising, to be able to get money from these other organizations that may not really have the best interests of Black folks, but they need some Black people out here representing them, you know, speaking highly of them, you know, well, we have them as a sponsor, so they down with the Black people and things like that. However, you know, we need those true Black-owned companies to be sponsoring these organizations. And that can be able to allow for these organizations to be unapologetically about their messaging on how they choose to get it out to the people, that they don't have the fear of that if they choose to go about the event or the program a certain kind of way, that they may end up cutting off the, you know, at getting their water cut off by losing, you know, potential funding dollars. So that's why it's important for us to be able to have that true equity in this space and having that true ownership. Because when we really get down to the economics, we have to make sure that the money is being funneled within our community. So I'll use myself as another example that's going for a license. As an owner, my goal is to be able to get as many Black and brown people involved in this industry as possible, as many folks as possible. And it don't necessarily have to be plant touching. You know, as an owner, you know, I get to pick who's my CFO. I get to pick who's my CPA. You know, I want to encourage more Black people to get into that space, even coming down to my attorney, you know, to be able to give them that experience in this space, in this industry, and allow for them to get the certification that they certified to be able to operate in this space, and to be able, you know, down to my HVAC guys, down to my electrician, down to my architects, down to my builders, down to my landscaping guy. Like it goes, the chain it's a full chain of how those dollars get, you know, it takes a lot to get a lot of stuff done. And the people that is chosen to get it done, in my opinion, needs to be Black folks of the community that has suffered from the war on drugs. So like I said, you don't necessarily have to touch the plant, because we happen to have those statutes in place that keep those that have been, you know, charged with, you know, narcotics or marijuana crimes and things like that. They are unable to get into the space. However, they can still benefit, you know, from the economic stimulation that's coming. But it's going to take for those companies to be able to recognize those individuals and give them the opportunity to be able to participate. And if it's not us, then who else? You know, I'm tired of constantly talking to other people like, yeah, we with this group and, you know, they're going to help us do this. Like, yo, why we can't do that? You know, I'm a business owner, you a business owner. Why we can't do business together? Why can't we collaborate together and put on an event that could better impact our people, versus leaning and hoping that somebody else do right for us and by us? I'm done with that. I'm done with that.
It's making me think of, I don't know if you all have seen that, it's a documentary on Netflix called The Grass is Greener, featuring Fab Five Freddy, you know, real famous dude from hip hop era, 80s and stuff, from MTV, I think. But he went to a conference and was asking people about something similar, but you had white people that were making comments about why more Black people are not in the industry, and their answers were boiling down to competence, where they were saying that we're basically incompetent. And I heard something similar to that come from the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission with the second round of licenses, where they said when there were no social equity awardees at all in the first round, and they were saying, oh, well, the African American community just didn't have it. And that's like, how can you, that's not true. You know what I'm saying? That's not true. It's not true. And it's so not true that you literally have all the people who literally had it, they're locked up. So, and they weren't the only ones who could get it. You know what I'm saying? So just that type of play on words, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're practicing true social equity, then you will see it come through on the other side through the economic value that gets re-entered into the community because of the way that we do business when it is truly equity based, right? When you're actually empowering people to make their own decisions for their own community and not putting people in place to tell communities what they need, right? Like people know what they need, and we have to trust each other and validate each other by doing business with each other to let each other know that I trust you, you are competent, and not only are you competent, but the question of your competency is not even, it's not valid here because we're in the space, we're doing this work, and we're exchanging economics. Like we are making business choices that benefit not only me and you as Black people, but my family, my community, the tax dollars, right? These things have greater implications.
Yeah.
So when I think about economics, I think about the aspect of fiber, right? So when considering fiber, you can go into things such as the benefits of the environment, right? Soil erosion, right? Changing in soil profiles, the diverse ways that you can use fiber to increase, you know what I'm saying, the environment. And, when considering the economy, a lot of people think about, the medical field when considering the cannabis plant. They go straight towards the medical field. The medical field is great for what it does, right? But in the same sense, also from an environmental standpoint, you can look at the flowering plant as a more so a, because most of the most, if you're considering growing cannabis for the flower, you're mostly doing that indoors, right? So you want to take in consideration what the economic factor that puts out in the environment when considering power usage, right? But if you look at the outdoor use, you know what I'm saying, in the economic aspect of that, it's a little bit more, you know what I'm saying, feasible to do on a fiber end. And when you're considering like the uses of fiber, right? You can use fiber for paper, clothing, you know what I'm saying, biofuels, food, right? When considering food, that's like micronutrients. You know what I'm saying? Like vitamin A, vitamin K, iron, calcium, you know what I'm saying? Things of that nature. So those things that you can, that people could benefit from just eating the plant, or utilizing the plant on a economic field when considering the restaurant industry. Yeah, so I look at the economic aspect as more of a capitalistic aspect when considering fiber. You know what I'm saying? I know the social aspect is still in tune with that. You know what I'm saying? But that's how I look at the economic aspect of it.
I mean, I definitely see it when you think about the fact of, like you said, like it's really a conversation of environmental justice as well. Like the impact that hemp, industrial hemp and cannabis can have on the planet, and how that trickles down into things like water quality, air quality. You see what's going on in Flint, Michigan right now. They basically have written off all of the criminal charges in Flint. Like all these people have been poisoned and nobody is nobody is being held accountable for this. And you think about the ability of a plant like industrial hemp, how it can filter the soil to filter the water better. And it quite literally can show itself in these ways. But again, it is not, and thank you, Snapper, for pulling us out of just the medicinal framework. Like this plant has food, fiber, fuel, like it does all of these things, and all of these things have an environmental impact. And we know that climate change is going to impact every single industry economically across the planet, right? Because business as usual is not going to be able to carry on. So even when we think about social equity and economics as it pertains to the environment, environmental justice, that is cannabis still has a huge conversation. There's a big conversation to be had there. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's extreme conversation. As you stepped into that, the only thing that kept popping in my head is education. Our people must know. And the only way to really make that happen is with true social equity, and we control the economics of it. So I'll use myself again as an example, to be able to create economic, to be able to use your economics to be able to create a a more educated youth. So let's go back to our collegiate, our college students. Those that are interested in the cannabis space, that understand the cannabis space, but they not necessarily looking at the aspect of recreational medicinal. They want to tap more into the hemp side of it. We can be able to use our nonprofit organizations to be able to create scholarships for these students that they may be able to have access to these tools to be able to learn more about it. But if it's not us that's doing it, nobody else is going to be able to recognize it and do it when we are the ones that see it on a day-to-day basis. We're out here in our community. We out here having a conversation with the people. So when we have that control of the economics and the true social equity, we're able to create phenomenal programs that we know that'll be able to ultimately benefit our community. And scholarship, man, that's a big one. Because if I had a scholarship when I was in college to be able to help me out with anything, it always, even if it was simply just to be able for books or shoot, just to eat. Just to be able to help that student to be able to put them in a more stress-free environment where they are able to focus on their studies, to be able to understand the inner workings of things, and actually creating a pathway for them to be able to get experience in this space and industry and agricultural and farming and business aspect of the industry. I think we have a valuable opportunity to be able to create that, but that's only if we, well, ain't no only if, because we definitely creating it, true social equity. So as we continue to move forward, man, I think we have an amazing opportunity here to have individuals like us in the space to be able to uplift others and ultimately, encourage other people to get into the space, because we can't do it alone. So it's important that we continue to push forward the message, and it comes with true economics and true equity. So yeah, that's all. I just want to make sure we didn't forget about the education, because that's a critical piece as we move forward.
I mean, we're right at the point where we hit our 3 points, y'all. So I think you sprinkle education in, but I mean, perfectly. We really should have opened with that because of the impact that it really carries when you have an educated consumer base. Like, nobody falls for the whoop-de-doop when you know what's going on, So today's conversation, we focused a lot on, of course, right, economics and the relationship of that to social equity within the cannabis industry. So what are 3 things from today that y'all feel like people absolutely need to carry with them as we move into very, very real legislative changes here in Alabama and across the nation? What are 3 things that people should take away from this?
I guess I'll go first. One of the most important things I feel like we should take away from today is creating true equity. Support those grassroots organizations, those individuals that that's out here doing the work. But the only reason they are unable to complete the work because they lack support and encouragement to be able to push them forward. Uplift everybody that that's up here putting up the good fight. The second thing I would like for folks to be able to take away from it, be resourceful with your dollars. Spend your dollars where you know that your dollar is valued. Don't just go out here, especially now that we have the medical cannabis industry coming. Don't just go out here buying stuff because you want to be able to buy it. Be strategic about how you want to spend your dollars. That is, make sure that it's funding and supporting the right folks that you want for it to be able to support. And third, make sure y'all get y'all butt to Montgomery, Alabama, November 27th at 10 a.m. to be able to listen to these public presentations as these companies make their presentations on why they should be awarded dollars. Be in that room so you can be able to connect and hear from the people that's going to be the ones controlling and holding the stakes here in your industry here in the state of Alabama.
So my first point would be supporting your politicians in your community that are standing up for the people who are incarcerated, right? They need true representation. While we in these streets enjoying the product and reaping the benefits of the medical aspect of it and fiber and all that, they need to actually be represented from an incarceration phase, number 1. Number 2, don't forget about the food aspect, right? The nutritional values that it can be used from an economical standpoint. And number 3, the fiber. You know what I'm saying? Don't forget about that fiber, right? So you can use fiber, like I said, changing those soil profiles to your desired effect. Climate, remediation. All of those things that are important when considering the economy and social equity.
I would have to say that my 3 are, I'm going to have to open with education. I think that a conscious consumer, an educated is really a producer. You know what I'm saying? Because of the power that we have to produce new knowledge and to share the knowledge, the things that we know with the people in our community, because we're all impacted by what goes on. I say, so yes, be educated is the first thing that I encourage people to walk away from this conversation with. Also be expansive, right? Like this industry is not small. It's actually so much room for everybody to get involved in some shape, form, or fashion. And not only is it so much room, but it's also so much need, right? As we just talked about, especially when you put on that environmental lens and look at what's going on in our communities. Like people are dying, right? People are unhealthy. People are crying for help, and they're not going to get it from McDonald's. They're not going to get it from Walmart. They're not going to get it from people outside of our community, because people benefit from the labor of our bodies and from our bodies not being healthy. So we have to be sure that we're expanding our conversations to think about health and wellness in a holistic way, which again, this crop does that. So I would say education, expand your mind. And I would ask questions about, again, how do you allow your economics to to stand for what you believe in, especially as we're seeing the lack of humanity all over the world, from the Gaza Strip to Congo, all over the world. We're seeing people, Black people, people of color, their humanity is being stripped from them. And the way that we choose to spend our money here in the United States has international implications, right? So there's a nation international boycott against different companies. So I encourage people to look that up and stand on your economics, and let your economics stand for the same type of justice that you want to, and support that you want to be received from other people around the world, because we're watching it happen. And that looks like showing up, what I'm saying, on November 27th, and doing all of this work, and just showing up and doing your best to stay educated, because there is a lot going on. But that's what community is for, right? And so ultimately, we know that no one can grow the green alone. It takes a community that's willing to learn together and sow seeds of growth. And those are the seeds that we plan to keep on sowing here. So let's keep learning, reaping, and sowing here at Cooperative.